Italy will be going for a first win against a Tier 1 nation since they beat Wales in last year's Six Nations. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. Italy v Japan. It's in the Stadio di Monigo in Treviso. It's on Saturday, 28th of August, and kickoff is 5:30 BST. Okay, so let's start with a look at the home team as usual. So, Italy fullback is Tommaso Allan. Right wing is Ange Capuozzo. So, kind of interesting there, putting Capuozzo in there instead of the fullback. I think right wing has been a bit of a problem position for them, and it's probably a case of trying to get what they feel is their best players all on the pitch at the same time, because who was it, like a few different players. Odogu had a chance there, you had Bruno there as well, thought maybe Pani might have got to go as well, but nobody's really kind of catching the eye there in a positive way, at least. So Capuozzo on there might actually, if he goes well, I think he'd probably do better if he was at fullback, but still, it's a decent enough thing. And maybe in terms of, their attacking structure in that back three, maybe at times Capuozzo and Allan would swap positions to allow Capuozzo to actually break from the back as well, from, long kicks and that kind of thing. Into the centres then we got Juan Ignacio Brex and Luca Morisi. With no Menoncello, I think this is their best centre partnership and probably going to be the partnership for the Rugby World Cup. I think Brex and Menoncello could have been something special for them, but Morisi is no slouch either. Then we've got Monty Ioane. He's come back in. He's shown what they missed in the Six Nations, and it's a pity that they didn't have him available then as well, because I think at this point he would be even better. We've got Paolo Garbisi at 10 and Stephen Burley at 9. So hopefully, it looks like 9 and 10 again. With if Allen's going to be playing fullback for the Rugby World Cup, maybe 10 is settled in, and you just go Garbisi. 9, we had Paolo's brother Alessandro in at 9 against Romania last week. We got Stephen Barney back. I think Barney's probably going to be the starting 9 for the Rugby World Cup. So looking at possibly a starting backline there, I think giving these guys time together would be good if they are going to be the starting backline for them. So give them as much time as you can before you start making changes, I think, in that second half. But it's a decent backline. I think they've struggled a little bit in terms of just combinations and seeing players kind of taking each other's space, and seeing players as well not being quite on the right wavelength too. But you can see that with the ambition that they show, if they do click, they are very dangerous. Into the forwards then, this looks like a very strong forward pack. Got Lorenzo Canone in there, Michel Lamro and Sebastian Negri. So I think that is absolutely going to be their starting back row for the Rugby World Cup, barring injury. Like Canone has sat out, or Lorenzo that is, has sat out, or been on the bench for a few of the warm-up games when they've had, who's it, Talafihi was in there, right? Instead. So, but I think he is going to be the starting 8 for the Rugby World Cup. You got Michel Lamro there, absolutely great captain for them. I talked about previous, when there was rumours of Parise making a comeback, that it would be the wrong decision, because I think having him in the squad would undermine Lamro, and Lamro just seems like that kind of personality who's bigger than the sport itself in Italy. I think he's going to be someone who is in a positive way going to impact rugby in Italy even beyond his playing days. and having him as the captain for this to be his World Cup as captain and not the swan song for Parise. Parise's been a fantastic player for Italy, but it was the right decision, I think, not to bring him. Then you got Sebastian Negri in there, and together they are a really good unit as a back row. The second row then we got Federico Ruzza and Nicolo Canone. I think given the injuries that they had, players unavailable, this is definitely going to be their starting second row. I think these two guys really, complement each other. They're both really good in the loose and good carries as well. And, they do the unseen work, they do the tough stuff as well. And really, you can just see this pack growing together, not just in this World Cup, but beyond it as well. But I think the experience of going together through the World Cup together is really going to bring these guys on. Then you got Simone Ferrari at tight head, you got Giacomo Nicotera at hooker, and then Ivan Neymar at loose head. So I think in that you could have, you could argue that you've got two out of the three starters for the Rugby World Cup there. Neymar probably not going to be a starter. On the bench then we got Luca Bigi, definitely will be finding out with Nicotero for the start, but I think two decent hookers. You got Danilo Fischetti. I'd expect him to be starting in the Rugby World Cup. He is, an absolutely great player for them, had a great Six Nations and just seems to be coming on in leaps and bounds as well. Then you got Pietro Cesarelli, decent backup, I think, on the bench, but I don't think he's going to force his way into the starting team, but I could be wrong on that. You got Dino Lam, backup for the second row. I don't think he's going to go any further than that, other than injuries. Then we got Giovanni Pettinelli. I'm pretty sure he came back from an injury. I don't think, my memory might be playing tricks on me, but I think he was kind of injured around about the Six Nations, right? And then he was coming back. So good to see him coming back and giving more options. Same with Manuel Zuliani. I think he gives them, options in terms of their back row there, in terms of mixing it up if things aren't going their way. Then we've got Martin Page, Rello, definitely just fighting out for a spot at 9, as a backup rather than a starter. And we got Paolo Odogu. He's got his chance on the right wing, and I don't think he really took it all that well. And that's probably why we're seeing Ange Capuozzo there. So that is the Italian team, very strong team, and they're probably going to be very confident going into this after that massive win against Romania last week. Then on to the Japan team. Just a couple of things to say before we get into the team itself. So first of all, I was trying to work out what is Republitan D, and I was talking to my wife about it, and then she it's the sponsor of the tour. I was trying to work out what it was, because I thought, because normally if things are in katakana in Japanese, which is the writing you see there before Tour 2023, it only means it's like a board word from another language. But this is it's like a kind of an energy vitamin drink that they have in Japan. Not quite like Monster Energy, but it's the same kind of deal. It's an energy drink, but they sell them in tiny little 100 ml. They look like medicine bottles, and you see them in konbinis, which is convenience stores in Japan, all the time. So when my wife reminded me, I remember seeing them always next to the counter. I've never tried them, so I can't tell you what they taste like. My wife said she used to take them when she was a swimmer when she was younger, but I don't like Monster Energy or any of those, so no kind of desire to try them at all when I was in Japan. But that's one thing. The other thing was, I was going to say when I was looking at this, why they split their team into three different like sections for their tweet, instead of like doing what every team seems to do something slightly different, but at least to have the entire squad on, one page rather than three. I'm trying to work out, it's weird why they do that. But then remember, I lived in Japan, I worked in Japan, and stuff like this would happen a lot where, people outside of Japan think of Japan as this like ultra technology country, and it's basically just a veneer. If you've lived there, you know what I mean. If you work there, the fact that they still use fax for everything, they still use paper for everything, and so things like this kind of, I've seen them before in, like, I worked in schools and stuff in like presentations and stuff is kind of similar to this kind of style. So I can see why it is. But anyway, enough of my reminiscing about living in Japan. Back to the team. So we got front row is Miller, Horie and Gu. Second row is Cornelson and Hilu. Then we got Leach, Himeno and Fukui as the back row. So, you got kind of I'd say a bit of the core of the 2019 team, and you've had new players coming in as well. But, it's a lot of these guys aren't in great form, honestly, for Japan, for the Brave Blossoms. I think like the likes of Leach, he's not the captain anymore, and I think he's at the kind of level now where he can still produce a good performance, pull it out the bag, but overall his performance is not quite at the levels that it used to be. And the new guys that have come in, in the front row and the second row, I don't think they're up to the standard of the guys that were there before them. And overall, I think it's a diminished pack compared to what they had in 2019. Onto the backs then, we got halfbacks are Nagare and Lee. Again, not as good a pairing as they had. Nagare was, he was basically the backup in 2019, right? Around that kind of area or time, he was the bench guy. And this combination here, again, not as good as what they had in the last World Cup. Centers again, Osada and Riley, decent players, but they had something special in their back line in 2019 that I think is missing. On the wings then we got Naika Bula. I can't really tell you all that much about him. We got Matsushima at full back, again a decent player, and then Masirewa on the right wing. Again, they're decent players. They still try to play in a way that we've seen Japan before, offloading out of contact, keeping the ball alive, that kind of thing. But the skills are just a little bit lower, and it means that, they get that just a little bit less success as well. On the bench then we have Sakate at hooker, got Inagaki at loose head and Valu at tight head. So, Inagaki, decent around the park, but again, like as a unit, they're not up there with where Japan were before. Then we got Saomaki, Gunter, and Saito. Saomaki and Gunter there as second row and back row replacements. So, again, decent players, but Japan, they haven't really kicked on the way we expected them to after 2019. There is a reason for that, because they were basically made a tier 1 nation without any of the benefits of being a tier 1 nation, which is basically, so they're a tier 1 nation in name only, as far as I'm concerned, because, they don't get to play other tier 1 nations all that often. What before Japan were made a Tier 1 nation as well, the definition of a Tier 1 nation was a nation that played in one of the top 2 rugby championships outside of the World Cup in the world. So that was, you either had to be in the Six Nations or in the Rugby Championship. And if you weren't, you were at least a Tier 2, going down to Tier 3, etc. nation. So that was the definition prior to Japan being made Tier 1. And I don't know why World Rugby decided to make them Tier 1 other than for it to look good for them, because Japan haven't seemed to have gotten the support that they need. And they need to be in, I would say the Rugby Championship, because it makes sense with Japan. Even though they're a Northern Hemisphere team, I don't think they fit in the Six Nations, and Six Nations are kind of arguing about expanding, whether South Africa are going to join, Georgia, etc. And that's going to roll on for years anyway. But Japan, given their time zone, they absolutely fit in with the Rugby Championship. I think they would be, a decent addition to that. We did have, they had a team in Super Rugby, and it looked like that was going to be kind of their gateway to the national team actually becoming, part of the Rugby Championship. I don't know where they are with that at the minute, but it looks like, Japan's development has suffered by, the fact that they no longer have a Super Rugby team, and their national team is not getting the games that they need against tougher opposition to help them to develop. But back to the team, so you got Saito there, replacing 9, and they got Matsuda and Nakamura there as well for the back. So Matsuda and Nakamura, they've been around for a good while, but they've often been on the bench as well for the team. So again, just a lot of quality kind of missing from the team. And even when I think when they pick their best 23 altogether, they're still down on where they were at the previous World Cup. And something, that people, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, and I think in the Rugby Championship nations as well, because again, they haven't seen that much of Japan, is that, in between World Cups, we often have a kind of a frozen idea of where nations are in relation to other nations, and we would consider Japan to be very strong, but at the moment they're not, honestly, and they need to just rediscover some form. So winning this game will be absolutely huge, I think, for this Japan team. The teams did play, I think the last time was in 2018 before the last World Cup, and let me just pull up the score. So it was, I think it was 22-25, right? It was 22-25, and it was played in Japan, and it was pretty close, as you'd expect, like with just one score in it. You had a few players who were playing in this game, from it, like Japan had about half of their pack are either starting or are on the bench in this one. So you got Inagaki, Horie, you have Leach, and then Himeno were all in the pack that day. In the backs, I think only was it only one survivor? Yeah, Matsushima, I think, is the only survivor from the backs from that game. But looking at the other players that were there, you had Tanaka, Tamura, Fukuoka, Lafele, Tupou. So you had I think, again, a better quality team than they have now. On the bench then, they had Nagare was on the bench that day. Matsuda was there as well, and Nakamura was in that one as well. So, they had about 7, I think, players involved in the last time that these two teams met. I think, as I said, Japan, I think, are a worse side now than they were back then. Italy, they had, let me see, Negri was playing at 6 for them. But other than that, Nobody really survived. Like Pelledri was there as well, but he's not available at the moment. In the backs, then they had Allen was playing at 10, but it's other than that, it's completely different back line. They had Violi at 9. They had Minozzi and Benvenuti on the wings. They had Castello and Campagnaro in the centres, and they had Hayward at full back. So pretty much, other than Allen, completely changed back line, apart from Negri, completely changed pack as well. On the bench that day, they did have Ferrari, and nobody else really. The other team, the others there. Oh, actually, is there anyone else on the bench? I'll just have a quick compare to them. Bigi was there as well. Luca Bigi was on the bench that day. So other than that, not very many players have survived, and Italy have come on leaps and bounds since then. So you would expect, talking about the game in terms of overall, I think you would expect Italy to win this one. They should win it actually pretty comfortably. I don't think they will, because there's going to be that weight of expectation on them. I think Japan, given that they haven't performed all that well lately, like they've lost to some teams that they would have been beating previously, but I think the fact that it's a warm-up, they're going into World Cup, the guys want to put their best foot forward, that they will give Italy a game. But I think in the end, Italy are going to come out on top. It kind of, I've got a soft spot for both these teams. I haven't liked the bad rap Italy have gotten over, not necessarily this year, but last year and previous years in the Six Nations, when people were saying, they should be kicked out, etc., etc. Haven't liked that. I've really enjoyed that Italy. They've obviously put a great system in place around the 20s, and they're getting so much better at that. And you've seen players now coming through into the national team as well, and they have improved. I still don't like the fact that they try to play out of their own 22, but what can you do? But they're showing more ambition, and they're Benetton are doing a lot better as well. Not just at URC level, but also when they go into the wider European competitions. And you can see that Italy are a coming nation. Japan, I wish, like my heart really is with Japan. Given that my wife is Japanese and I lived there for quite a while, that I wish that I could see Japan as a coming nation as well. But I think that the chance that was there has kind of been squandered. And, I saw when I was there, I lived there, I was a teacher there during the 2019 World Cup. I could see so many kids at elementary school, junior high school and high school level, being inspired by the Brave Blossoms. And when I went there first, I remember, it was 2015 was when I moved there first. It wasn't the first time I went to Japan, but when I went to live there, it was 2015. And I remember telling students at the school that, I was a big rugby fan, etc. And when I started that year, kids knew absolutely nothing about rugby at all. Then Japan did well. They beat South Africa. Then everybody knew who Goromaro was. Then fast forward to 2019, everybody knew who Leach was, and they knew, a lot of the players in the team as well. And they were starting to see homegrown players, and not just imports as well, and being able to identify with them. And it looked like, all these guys are going to get inspired now, but now we're kind of worried that they could tank in this World Cup. They got a great chance, though, to get out of their pool, and hopefully they take it. But, I'm worried that they're going to tank in the World Cup, and then what effect is that going to have on development in Japan? Because I think, again, there hasn't really been all that much in terms of trying to develop at younger ages as well. And it's a pity because there are a lot of young players who they're not quite ready to be, to come into national teams or even under 20s. They're kind of still too young. They're kind of, pre-teens and early teens at the moment. And we need to have, I think, for Japan's sake, another good Rugby World Cup from them where they make a quarter final. I think that would be huge for the nation and give them that extra spur. I think World Rugby has to do something else for them as well and get them into the Rugby Championship. I think even if they're going to be like Italy where they go in and they get absolutely trashed, for the first few years, they're still going to get better and the players are going to develop playing against, higher quality players, and they will over time learn. They've shown they're very adaptable and it can cause issues for teams. So, but as I said, my heart is with Japan, but I've got to go with, I think Italy are going to win this probably by about 10 to 14 points. I think will be the final score or the final margin, but hopefully Japan can kind of make a game of it at least.